Picture this. You're standing on Fifth Avenue today. Traffic rushes past. Tourists crowd the sidewalks outside Tiffany's and Bergdorf Goodman. The Empire State Building towers above everything, a monument to commerce, ambition, and modern New York. But here's what most people don't know. Fifth Avenue looks like this today because one woman lost a war she never meant to fight. Not a Vanderbilt, not a government official, but Caroline Astor, the most powerful socialite in American history. In the next 10 minutes, you'll understand why Fifth Avenue became the most expensive street in the world, and why it all began with a single decision made in 1895. Before 1890, Fifth Avenue wasn't what you see today. No department stores, no hotels, no Empire State Building piercing the sky. It was residential, quiet. A long procession of brownstone mansions where New York's oldest families lived behind heavy curtains and iron gates. This was where wealth didn't shout, it whispered. And at the center of it all, at 350 Fifth Avenue and 34th Street, lived Caroline Webster Schermerhorn Astor, simply known as the Mrs. Astor. Her mansion was externally modest, a brownstone like the others, but inside, that's where power lived. Drawing rooms filled with European art, a converted ballroom that could hold several hundred guests. And every January, the social event that determined who mattered in New York, Mrs. Astor's Ball. If you weren't invited, you didn't exist. She controlled access to New York society with the precision of a general. Her partner, Ward McAllister, famously declared there were only 400 people in New York worth knowing, the exact capacity of Mrs. Astor's ballroom. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't about money. The Astors were rich, yes, built on fur trading and Manhattan real estate. But Fifth Avenue wasn't where money was made. It was where status was displayed, where old Dutch families like the Schermerhorns proved that lineage mattered more than new fortunes. Caroline Astor despised commerce. She despised noise. She despised strangers. And for decades, Fifth Avenue protected her from all three. Then came the feud. William Waldorf Astor, Caroline's nephew by marriage, believed he deserved the title Mrs. Astor for his own wife. Caroline refused. The title was hers. The power was hers. So William Waldorf Astor did something unthinkable. In 1893, he demolished his mansion right next to Caroline's home, and in its place, he built a 13-story hotel. The Waldorf. Not a private residence, not another brownstone. A luxury hotel with public access, open to anyone who could afford a room. Think about what that meant. Construction noise hammering through Caroline's walls for over a year. Thousands of strangers arriving daily by carriage. Deliveries at all hours. Tourists gawking at the building next door to the most exclusive address in America. William Waldorf Astor reportedly watched with glee as hotel guests invaded his aunt's privacy. But the final insult came in 1894. A vagrant entered Mrs. Astor's mansion and fell asleep in a servant's bed. The incident made the newspapers. The public, hungry for scandal, sided with the intruder, not with Caroline. Her authority cracked in public for the first time. This wasn't just about a hotel. It was about the end of an era. Fifth Avenue was no longer a private sanctuary. Commerce had arrived. And Caroline Astor, who had controlled New York society for 30 years, suddenly couldn't control her own block. In 1895, Caroline Astor made a decision. She sold her mansion, she demolished it, and she left Midtown forever. Her new address, 840 Fifth Avenue at 65th Street. Two connected French Renaissance chateaux designed by Richard Morris Hunt overlooking Central Park. One for her, one for her son. It was grand. It was private. It was far from the noise. But here's what mattered. Caroline Astor didn't just move house, she moved New York. Because where Mrs. Astor went, society followed. The Vanderbilts built north. The other old families abandoned their brownstones. Fifth Avenue above 59th Street became the new center of wealth and power. What we now call the Upper East Side, that's Caroline Astor's doing. She thought she was escaping modernity. She thought moving north would restore the privacy she'd lost. But by leaving, she handed Fifth Avenue to the very forces she despised. Because once Mrs. Astor left, there was no one powerful enough to stop what came next. The brownstones emptied, real estate became available, and commerce flooded in. In 1897, John Jacob Astor IV, Caroline's nephew, built the Astoria Hotel right next to the Waldorf. The two merged into the Waldorf Astoria, the largest and most luxurious hotel in the world. But even that didn't last. In 1929, the Waldorf Astoria was demolished to make way for something bigger. The Empire State Building. 102 stories, the tallest building in the world. Standing on the exact spot where Caroline Astor once hosted her exclusive balls, her mansion demolished, her ballroom gone, her privacy erased by the modern city. And it wasn't just her. At Fifth Avenue and 57th Street, Cornelius Vanderbilt II built the largest private home ever constructed in New York. Over 130 rooms, a palace that dominated the block. Demolished in 1927. What stands there today? Bergdorf Goodman. Fifth Avenue didn't become commercial by accident. It became commercial because Mrs. Astor left, because the old families retreated, because privacy gave way to profit. The modern city was born in that void. Here's the irony. Caroline Astor spent her entire life resisting modernity. She wanted Fifth Avenue to remain what it had always been: quiet, exclusive, controlled. But her retreat north didn't preserve the past, it destroyed it. By abandoning 34th Street, she removed the last social barrier protecting Fifth Avenue from commerce. Hotels replaced mansions, department stores replaced drawing rooms, tourists replaced the 400. Her new mansion at 65th Street, demolished in 1926, replaced by Temple Emmanuel. Nothing she built survived. But her decision, that moment in 1895 when she chose to leave rather than fight, that decision still shapes New York today. Fifth Avenue is the most expensive retail street in the world because Caroline Astor lost control of it. The Upper East Side exists because she moved there. The Empire State Building stands where she once stood. She wanted to protect the past. Instead, she created the future. Mrs. Astor lost Fifth Avenue. And because of that, the modern city was born.